All right, thanks so much for being with us here on Atlanta News First Plus. I'm Joy Lim Nakrin, joined today by attorney Erica Wilson. Thank you so much for being with us, Erica. So we're here to discuss some of the top legal stories that we're following. First of all, we want to start with this verdict in the Hannah Payne trial. Hannah Payne has now been convicted on all counts against her, and that includes 2 counts of murder, felony murder and malice murder. She was found guilty on 8 counts in all. As the verdict was read in court, this woman at the center of this Clayton County murder investigation really, looked overwhelmed with emotion. Again, here's the story. She has now been convicted of murdering a man after he allegedly left the scene of a hit and run in 2019. So during jury deliberation, the jury asked to take a look at some of the body camera video that we've been showing here on Atlanta News First, but then it only took 30 minutes for them to actually solidify their verdict. This is the victim, 62-year-old Kenneth Herring, who left the scene of that hit and run. Again, this was in 2019. He allegedly had caused that crash. Prosecutors say Hannah Payne followed him and shot him in his truck. Again, she was found guilty on 8 counts. That includes felony murder and malice murder. Payne's attorney told jurors during closing arguments his client had acted in self-defense. Victim's family saying, though, they are very pleased with this decision. Let's listen to some of their reaction.
Been long and arduous. It was hard on my family.
I'll never forget it. It will forever be ingrained in my heart and in my mind.
And sentencing will actually take place on Friday at 10 o'clock at the Clayton County Courthouse. Erica, this case obviously very racially charged. Many people actually drawing comparisons to Ahmaud Arbery's case. What is your reaction to this verdict?
I think it's a quintessential example of quick and swift justice. I mean, I think the amount of time that the jurors took to kind of go through this, I mean, it really didn't require even that much time. I think it was very obvious to even lay people following the case that she was guilty. She was all types of wrong, as my grandmother would say, in terms of violation of the law. She was advised by law enforcement to not follow. This was vigilante justice. This is the epitome of what we consider to be vigilante justice, and now justice was finally served for the victim's family.
Yeah, and just the short amount of time that it took for them to actually reach a verdict, and then the fact that they went back and looked at that video just to kind of clear up any second thoughts that they may have. What does that say about what was going through the jurors' minds?
It says that it could say a lot of things. It says that the state did a really good job in their presentation of evidence. It could demonstrate that, you have some cases where jurors, and what I'm told, they took copious notes, and they were following along. So it would not have taken much time for deliberation once they all got together if they had all come to their conclusion prior to the close of the case. And,
obviously, unfortunately, Mr. Herring can never be brought back. That's something that cannot be undone. But the family, as we heard from the family, they did express that they felt justice was served in some way. But I want to ask you, obviously there's the issue of closure, but precedent. What does this do for anyone else who might be in a similar situation, anyone else who may be vulnerable to somebody trying to seek their idea of vigilante justice, someone who is essentially entitled? What does this do in terms of changing not just legal precedent, but behavior, human behavior?
So I guess it may be premature to just determine what will come of that. I think what we're all waiting for is when she is actually sentenced. I think the sentencing will be what will definitely serve as a deterrent to others who want to do this. And I think just in terms of whether or not laws and precedent will be changed, again, we need to wait and see if she gets through the appeals process. But certainly, I think it definitely sends a message that you cannot do this quasi-citizen's arrest. You cannot take justice into your own hands. There's law enforcement, there are laws, there are rules, there are policies and procedures that we all, as citizens of this world, need to follow and not get into trying to take justice into our own hands.
Absolutely. When we're talking about the sentencing here, which is set to take place again on Friday, what do we anticipate with that? We know the sentencing hearing, we're typically going to hear victims' impact statements, right? From the family and so forth. But What else can we anticipate?
So you'll hear both sides. You definitely will hear from the victims' families, and they will make impact statements. But what you will also hear from the defense are any mitigating factors. This is where now the defense will get to paint the defendant as a person, and it hopes to throw themselves at the mercy of the court in terms of whether or not the judge will dispense a harsh sentence or give her the opportunity to maybe do, I don't see anything like probation or anything, but in terms of like a light sentence or a long sentence, that can be determined on whether or not her attorneys make a good case for her. How is she going to be able to be rehabilitated? Is she going to be a threat to the community? I think certainly that would be one of the biggest concerns, is that you definitely tried to take the protection of the community in your own hands, and then it resulted in someone's death, which was certainly unfortunate. So you'll hear both sides. You'll hear the victim's impact statement, but the attorneys for Hannah will definitely have an opportunity to try to mitigate whatever damage has already been done, in hopes of receiving the most favorable sentence for her as possible.
Any other thoughts on this case?
I think it's just a sad set of facts, and it's certainly for people, just allow law enforcement to do their jobs, and it becomes even more unfortunate. And when you learn that he possibly fled the scene because he was seeking medical help, he's having a diabetic crisis, and so you never know what a person's reasons are. You can certainly assist the police in calling them and giving them the necessary information, but do not take the law into your own hands.
Absolutely, 100%, 100%. And, obviously we're going to be following the latest with the sentencing here on Atlanta News First Plus, and we'll bring that to everybody, the live coverage, of course. But I want to ask you about another major case that we are following as well. Jury selection underway today in the sexual harassment case against the former Fulton County DA, Paul Howard. And let me just kind of show you this video from inside court, which we had our crews capture. But the situation is that Howard is accused of pressuring a former employee into engaging in sexual activities. He, of course, is claiming he's innocent, which is why there is a trial, because there's a dispute over whether he is innocent or guilty. He tried to get this case tossed out. A judge ruled there is enough evidence for this case to proceed, so here we are, jury selection getting underway. Okay, Erica, so with this jury selection process, what are we expecting?
So with the jury selection process, this is definitely going to be interesting, because Paul Howard is representing himself, and certainly, if anyone's heard the old adage of a man who represents himself has a fool for a client, I think he's being overly zealous in his own representation. But as far as the jury selection, it's going to be the same process in bringing in citizens from the community, going through the necessary questions. The voir dire for this will certainly be a little different, because you have to understand that in ruling out potential jurors, that could be anybody who has had any sort of encounter with Paul Howard or the DA's office, and certainly he will be seeking to try to have those stricken from the juror pool. And so it's certainly going to be interesting to kind of follow this and see, just in terms of what basis for striking jurors he will come up with, because again, he was the DA in Fulton County for quite some time, and that has impacted and touched a lot of people, either as a victim or a criminal defendant.
Yeah, so what basis can he use for striking jurors?
It depends, and there's several. We call this the voir dire process, and that's just simply the Latin word for asking questions. Whatever the questions may be, whether or not how far attenuated they were in working with Howard, certainly the goal is to try to determine that they will automatically be biased, and you can ask certain questions to demonstrate the bias. Did Paul Howard perhaps prosecute your brother, and was he found guilty, or were you a victim and the defendant was not found guilty? All of these things, arguments can be made that would demonstrate bias, and if I'm Paul Howard, or if attorneys representing Paul Howard, I would try to use that as a basis to have those jurors removed from the pool.
Let me ask you this: so will the plaintiff get to be present for this jury selection process?
Absolutely, but the difference is that Paul Howard is representing himself, and he's there as a party, but he's also there as the attorney. So he will be the one to be able to engage and interact with these jurors and ask them questions and go through that removal process. The plaintiffs, certainly, they're a party to the matter. They have a right to be there, but the differentiated, they won't themselves be able to engage with the jurors.
And how long do you expect that this process is going to last?
It's very hard to say. It could be quick and swift justice, as we kind of saw with Hannah here. But what we can definitely anticipate, you have what we had was a very skilled prosecutor for years, and so now he's on the defense side. You got to imagine how many of these similar type cases he's prosecuted himself, just in terms of any strategic or legal maneuvers that he is aware of on the prosecution side of things, and being able to kind of mitigate the damages for himself. It could depend. Some lawyers use delay tactics. Some lawyers would like to try to expedite the process. So it's going to be kind of dependent upon how he wants to play this, and how he wants to have any type of legal maneuvers around how he's going to defend himself.
Yeah, and obviously this is a civil case. So this was the plaintiff, Kathy Carter, who worked for Howard for 15 years, and she filed a lawsuit. It's not a criminal prosecution. But that being said, does it kind of go like a criminal prosecution in a lot of ways?
So in terms of that, the dealing with the sexuality, they still have to establish the sexual harassment. The standard is somewhat different, but the elements of the law do overlap, and so he still would have somewhat of an advantage having prosecuted similar cases and sexually violent type of crimes in this matter. But it'll be dealt with the same type of way. Just the burden of proof will be different. The burden of proof for criminal cases will be beyond reasonable doubt. For civil cases, it would be preponderance of the evidence.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so and then would there be a separate sentencing phase or a penalty phase? I guess what should we call it? Liability phase for determining how much he would have to pay her. Is that what we call it?
Usually, in civil cases, it really does depend on the judge. It really depends on what the attorneys ask for. Usually, dependent upon how much money the plaintiffs would be seeking, there could be a separate phase in that to determine what the actual damages usually are. Usually, though, in civil cases, damages will be levied with the verdict.
Okay, that's very interesting. Okay, and I want to also ask you about the latest on the YSL trial, which is on hold right now. I apologize. I'm still showing you video from Paul Howard. Here's what I meant to show you. So we know that the YSL trial is on hold right now because this co-defendant was stabbed by another inmate at the Fulton County Jail, and it happened during some sort of fight. That inmate now facing additional charges in relation to this. But this trial is going to be on hold for about 3 weeks because this defendant is not available, Shannon Stillwell, while recovering, and it's over the holidays and all that. Do you have concerns about this long break?
I have concerns as to this trial as a whole, not only for the basis for which they're trying to prosecute these gentlemen, but also just based on the amount of time that it has taken and the amount of time that they predict that it will take to try this. So this 3-week delay is making what is already a protracted litigation even longer. And so it's certainly it's unfortunate because it has a lot of ripples effect. This judge cannot hear any other cases. Some of the criminal attorneys that are on this case I use as referrals, and I've referred them cases. Those clients, their cases are now on hold. And so this is just for judicial economy. This is just not a good thing with all of these continued delays in an already long and protracted litigation.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on this YSL trial?
I have so many thoughts on this YSL trial. I don't even know why we're here in the first place. I've been very vocal. I think that this is, I have a lot of respect and admiration for Fonnie Willis, but I think that this is the quintessential example of prosecutorial overreach.
Oh, wow. All right. Well, thank you so much. Erica, so whenever you do these streams with us, of course, we really appreciate it, but we also do have people interested in seeing if they could hire you. How do they get in touch with you, and what kind of cases do you want to take?
Personal injury cases, civil rights cases. We also do premise liability. They can reach me at erica@ericawilsonlaw.com.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you so much, Erica Wilson, for joining us, Atlanta-based attorney. We really appreciate your expertise and analysis. And of course, for our viewers, we just want to let you know we're going to continue to follow the latest on all of these stories on Atlanta News First and Atlanta News First Plus. If you download our free Atlanta News First app, then you can get updates sent right to your phone. And when the YSL trial does resume, we are going to continue streaming